Hi and welcome to HR Debatable. My name is Nelly Verlinden, I'm your host, and today for this third episode of HR Debatable, I'm being joined once again by two fabulous guests. I'm here with Suzanne Lucas and Virgile Rangard. Hi Suzanne and hi Virgile.
Hello.
Hi Nelly.
Suzanne, perhaps we can start by you telling the people in the audience a little bit more about yourself.
I'm probably better known as the evil HR lady. I've been in HR in one way or another for the past 24 years, which makes me old. Yes, I'm old. And I had somebody insult me the other day, say, okay, boomer. And I was like, listen, I'm Gen X. I'm not that old. But anyway, my focus is on helping HR people make business better. So I'm very, very focused in the HR space and focusing on human resources people through writing and webinars. And I run a Facebook group. We've got 30,000 HR people where the whole focus is helping out human resources people so that they can do a better job, which in turn makes companies better and it makes employees happier.
Awesome. Thank you, Suzanne. Virgile, maybe you could also introduce yourself briefly.
I don't have as cool as a nickname as Suzanne though, so I'm just Virgile, I guess.
We'll give you
one. More than happy to get one during the podcast. But I started working in HR 14 years ago, and I did various roles in HR, specialist roles like compensation or HR systems, and then generalist HR and HR director for a few years. And then I created Figures 3 years ago. So Figures.hr is a compensation management platform that is helping companies take control of their compensation management. And it's basically we try to create the product that I would have loved to use when I was an HR director, right? To benchmark my compensation, create and share my salary bands, review compensation, whatever I was doing in an endless series of spreadsheets back then. Well, we try to help over 1,200 clients do it in a better way, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Virgile. Now, before we get started, let me quickly explain to both of you and also to everybody watching or listening what we are going to do. In HR Debatable, as the name suggests, we debate about various HR and world of work related topics. I have the pleasure of introducing a statement to both of you. I will give a little bit of context, of course, and then both of you will have the opportunity to say either if you are in favor of or against the statement that I just presented to you. And then, of course, we get to the fun part because you get the opportunity to elaborate on why you voted yes or no when it comes to the statements. Do we have any questions? No?
Can't wait.
Awesome. Then let's get started. Our first statement is related to, surprise, surprise, compensation and benefits. Cash is king is an often heard and much talked about phrase when we talk about employee compensation. And in an economy that has seen consistently high inflation for almost 2 years now, a preference for cash over, for instant purpose indeed makes sense. In the UK, research from YouGov found that when asked to choose the most important factor of an employee benefit, 73% of respondents selected the ability to save money as their top priority. Considerably behind were benefits focused on mental and physical well-being, with 42% and 39%. Others, however, state that being paid is a given and that a salary increase is certainly great, but that it doesn't automatically guarantee higher levels of satisfaction, motivation, fulfillment, and output. Even before the pandemic, money wasn't viewed as the best retention strategy. In 2018, a Harvard Business School assistant professor found that more than 80% of American employees didn't feel recognized or rewarded, despite American companies spending more than a fifth of their budget on wages. Employers should, therefore, look beyond a competitive salary package and benefits and shift their focus to intangible factors that employees seek. Those in the cash is no longer king camp propose to raise salary at 30% and benefits at 10%. The other 60% should consist of purpose plus people plus profits. As such, the cash is king philosophy makes for a great first statement, and here it comes. Don't believe the hype. It's not about benefits, remote, or purpose at work. Cash is still king for employees. Suzanne, I'm going to start with you. First, we start with, do you vote yes or no when it comes to the statement?
Do I have to vote yes or no, or can I vote it depends?
You can also vote yes but, or no but. We've had that before as well.
I'm going to say yes and.
All right. And Virgile, what are you going to vote? Yes or no? Or yes and? Or no but?
Big yes to this one. A big yes to this one.
All right. Well, Suzanne, I'm going to let you start first.
Okay. So absolutely, positively, it matters how much you pay your people, right? And pre-pandemic, there were all of these surveys that people said, oh, I would take a pay cut if I could work remotely. And then everybody started working remotely, and then CEOs wanted them to come back, and they're like, no, you're going to have to pay me more. So it's like, no, it's not that you would take a pay cut to work remotely. Now you want more to come back. Nobody wants to ever lower their pay. That is really, really critical. But within that, there's a certain level that you need in every city, every country, whatever, to survive and be happy. And if you can meet that for people, then those other things start to matter more. If I'm making 250,000 euros a year, which incidentally I am not, but let's say that I was, and somebody offers me a job for 265, but it's going to be twice the number of hours per week, I'm not going to take it. But if somebody offers me 225 and is like, but you get 6 months of vacation, sure. But if I'm making 60,000 and I'm barely getting by, and I'm buying all of my clothes off the clearance rack at C&A, and my kids don't have new toothbrushes or whatever, there's no way I'm going to take any sort of a pay cut, regardless of how many perks you offer me. So that was a long way of saying, once you've met a certain salary level, then those other things matter. But until you reach that salary level, and that line is different for every person. Some people, maybe they're perfectly happy at 60,000 euros and they have the lifestyle they want and everything is fine. Somebody else is like, well, I'm not going to be comfortable until I hit 300,000. So that's going to differ from person to person, but nobody willingly drops below whatever their comfort threshold is.
Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, Virgile.
I say yes for multiple reasons. First of all, and you stated that, right? Everyone has been talking about like remote work, like fulfillment at work and so on. And especially the narrative since the pandemic has switched to this being like those factors being the most important factors. But LinkedIn survey, like LinkedIn talent survey as of May this year, right? One of the biggest survey was they actually query candidates and employees about what matters to them. Number one, compensation, right? So I think we don't believe the hype we said, compensation and cash is still king. Point number two, I think most people underestimate especially in the current time, the financial distress that a lot of people are, right? And even in people that are paid relatively well, I think there was a survey, I think it was at Cisco, done by Josh Bersin, I believe, that showed like 45% of people felt they were on a certain state of financial distress, like from moderate to severe, right? So like fulfillment at work for those is like secondary to just alleviating that financial distress. But on the final point, in I think one of those same survey, they showed, however, that when it comes to cash, a minimum amount, as Suzanne was saying, is of course super important. But then what matters most and what has the biggest impact on motivation or demotivation is fairness or the perception of fairness. After a certain point, even if I'm paid well, if I feel like I'm treated unfairly, it's incredibly demotivating. So in fact, that survey showed that people perceiving that they paid fairly is 13 times more motivating to people like that being paid a high salary. Like it's really all about perceiving or feeling like you're being treated fairly when it comes to cash, being super important when it comes to motivation or demotivation.
All right. Thank you both. Now, I am, of course, playing the devil's advocate a little bit during this session to spark the debate a little further sometimes. And so one thing that I couldn't stop thinking about when I heard both of you talk is then why do we hear so much talk from organizations and in all these HR blog articles and so on about that people find it so important that they have purpose at work and that they have all these benefits in terms of physical, mental, financial well-being? Could it be then perhaps that companies are trying to market all these kinds of things just to not have to pay a higher salary? I'm just saying.
Ooh.
I'm going to start with you now, Virgile, since I started with Suzanne before.
I wouldn't think so, but that's actually a great point. I wouldn't think so. I think that the narrative, there's a form of narrative being created, and it's boring to say, you know what, cash still matters most to people. After a while, people want to find new areas and so on. And I think in a way, pre-pandemic with like the talent war and so on, people were searching for every avenue to be differentiating and like attractive to people and so on. And so just saying we pay well was not good enough. They're trying to find new ways, new benefits. There was a war on benefits and in fact an accumulation on benefits in some company, which is a bit inefficient because it's been proven that beyond a certain point, adding benefits is inefficient. So I don't think companies are doing that on purpose. I think there's just been, and it is important, right? Fulfillment at work, but I just think there's been a form of hype that moved us away from the simple fact that no, cash is still king to most people.
All right, Suzanne.
I think that's such an interesting thought. And I agree with Virgile. Cash is still king. I think part of it is companies still don't want to be honest about salaries. And in the United States, several states have passed laws requiring people to post salary ranges. And some of the companies posted ridiculous ranges. There was one that was $9 an hour to 1.2 million. Like, that's not a range, okay? Like, that's not, because for whatever reason, companies don't want to give out that information. And so they're unwilling to share what their compensation levels are. And we still have problems with recruiters reaching out. And I shouldn't say this is a problem with recruiters. It's a problem with the hiring managers and the CEOs that won't let the recruiters speak up. The recruiters are more than willing to, but they want to keep their jobs. And so you say, a recruiter reaches out and says, hey, I have this great position. And you say, what does it pay? And they say, oh, well, let's just hop on a call and then I'll talk to you about it. The companies don't want to share. I'm not going to take that call unless you tell me up front. Because I'm happy where I am. I'm happy running my own business. I make enough money for my needs and I'm happy here. So if you're not going to offer me more money, my 30-minute call with you to try to convince me is a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time. But companies repeatedly do this because they're terrified to share salary data. And there's good reason for them to be terrified, because there's a lot of inequality within companies. And this is one of the things that companies are finding out. When New York City took their wage law, where they had to post it on the job descriptions, a lot of companies were getting their current employees calling HR and saying, hey, why are you posting this position for more money than I'm making? And they didn't like it at all. But that's how markets work, right? Salaries go up and people don't like to increase their internal people because it's a huge pain in the neck to change jobs. And it's a risk to change jobs. So we're going to stay where we are unless there's a really good reason to change. So I think companies advertise all of those things because they don't want to talk about money. And then I also think, because I am someone that writes on the internet all of the time, right? I'm very tuned into what's written about HR, is that the people that are writing on the internet are people like me. We're white collar, we sit behind a computer, our bills are being paid, our kids go to good schools. So for us, we've met that threshold and those things are important.
Yeah.
But most of the world isn't at that comfortable threshold. Most people are below that. And we're not talking to those people. We're talking to our friends, the highly educated, the white collar career climbers. So we're like, oh, yes, it's very, very important to me that I can leave early on Tuesday to go to little Janie's ballet class. Whereas someone who is struggling is like, no, I'd like to work that extra hour so I can get overtime pay. And we're not talking to those people. So I think that's the disconnect.
Good point. I mean, Virgile, I saw you nodding very intensely a few times. Do you want to say anything?
No, I mean, those both points are amazing. I 100% agree with both, especially the first one when I think, right, we're getting into this paid transparency era, right? And it's inevitable the market is moving there, right? Laws have passed in the US. European directive on paid transparency was voted in April and is going to come into effect the next 3 years. And yeah, it's good. Like companies, whether they want it or not, gonna have to be more transparent, right? There's no way around. And I love the anecdote about Suzanne about like recruiters reaching out and being like, okay, not sharing salary ranges ahead of time and being just accepted. And this has been accepted for decades. That's crazy to me. Like, would you go and visit a house listed if you had like no idea on the price? Like, no, come visit it. At the end of the visit, we'll let you know how much it costs. Or would you go to a grocery store and you get to the cashier at the end and like, you don't know whatever it's going to cost. And then you're going to decide on the spot whether you buy it or not. So I think it's just crazy to me that this has been accepted as a norm for decades, but this is over. This is over. With laws is moving there. Market is moving there. So I think it's inevitable that pay transparency is going to force companies to be more honest about pay, as Suzanne was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think perhaps as a recap of this first very beautiful debate is that there are two important things that I will take away from this. One, indeed, we have this blue collar world and the white collar world. And I do think you made a really good point, Suzanne, that in one of the two, we can talk about things like purpose and can I get off at 4 p.m. On a Tuesday afternoon, etc. And in the other world, we are already very, very happy if we can just pay all the bills. I think something else that is probably playing a role here, maybe you can share your thoughts on it before we move on to the next statement, is I think that cash has become king, perhaps again, or never has not been king, because of everything that's happening in terms of inflation and everything that's getting more expensive, and that is still getting more expensive. So this is probably even making it more important for people, yet again, that they have a really good salary to start with. Some final thoughts perhaps on that?
All I know is that my grocery bill is insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's always insane because I live in Switzerland, but I do actually cross the border frequently to Germany, and it's still every time staple items that I buy are more expensive, and it's tough world out there. And so all of the nice, fluffy benefits in the world don't pay for my groceries.
No, exactly. I think at the end of the day, it's that simple.